Kyle Bradish on his way back to the Birds, a great sign for 2026. Felix Bautista, however, will be out for all of 2026. And this man, Trevor Rogers, has been lighting it up. Another good sign for 2026. You can see the theme here. One step forward, two steps back. Hello, everybody. I'm Jon Leiberman. This is Orioles Digest. We have a lot to talk about. Finally, the injuries catch up with the Orioles, not just for this year, but going into 2026 now, because we will be without Félix Bautista. We will discuss that. We will talk about how this Orioles pitching staff has absolutely been on fire for the past 6 weeks. What does that mean for 2026? And Kyle Bradish on his way back to the bigs. What does that mean as well? So we have a lot to get to. Please like, subscribe, do all the things, because this is Orioles Digest. And, we're going to get to that bad news about Felix in just a moment. But you all know I generally like to start with something fairly positive. So what have I told you that the number 2 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, and the Birds' first-round draft pick, his name, you know his name. His name is Ike. Ike hits his first homer down at Single A. Let's look at it. There it is. Ike's first homer as a professional baseball player, and that is a good sign for the future with one of the Birds' big draft picks just this year. Now we get to the not so good news, which is Felix Bautista. Unfortunately, Felix underwent surgery on a torn rotator cuff and labrum. The surgery happened in LA, and he's going to miss at least the next 12 months. So essentially, could he be back for postseason 2026? It's a possibility. It's unlikely, but it's a massive blow, not only to, of course, Felix's career, but also now it adds a major piece of what the Orioles will now need in the offseason for 2026, which is a closer in an already decimated bullpen. Now the Birds have to go out and actively look for a closer. And, the stats don't necessarily tell the tale. This is Felix this year, coming off of injury, only 34 innings pitched, but 50 Ks in that time, a 2.5 ERA. But again, he was a guy who you could count on at the back end of that rotation. And so this is it's quite the blow. Again, 2025, the year's essentially over for the Birds, barring some huge miracle. We're 8.5 out in the wild card. But this is a blow for 2026, and this now adds to Mike Elias's to-do list for 2026 and what he needs to do in this offseason, which is get a closer. So I want to hear what you all think in the comments, please. Now, the one good piece of news is the Birds may not need an ace in 2026. So we definitely have to go out and get a closer. But Kyle Bradish, final rehab start. He's ready to come back up to the bigs. He'll be with the Birds Monday or Tuesday. So you will see him back at the big league level. That's huge for this team. Huge for him to get some starts in August and September, and then hopefully have a great offseason and come back. Just huge in 2026. That's what the Birds are hoping. And, of course, Trevor Rogers. I mean, talk about somebody who has emerged as an ace of this ball club. He has emerged as the ace of this ball club. And so I want to get to his stats first. 12 games, 76 innings pitched. Obviously, he started later in the season because of injuries. Only 2 homers allowed. He's K'd 67. That ERA, 1.41. That whip, incredible. Trevor Rogers is slowly becoming a bona fide major league ace. And this is super important because if you can have Trevor Rogers at or near the top of your rotation, Kyle Bradish at or near the top of your rotation, maybe Grayson Rodriguez comes back healthy. Then you have, you definitely have Dean Kramer, who has been super solid lately. You have some young guys like Cade Povich who can fill in. We don't know what's going to happen with Sagano. We don't know what's going to happen with Zach Eflin. Zach Eflin has said he wants to come back to the Birds, but not to understate Trevor Rogers' number. Best ERA by an Orioles starter through the first 12 starts of a season. Trevor Rogers is number one with the 1.41 that I just showed you, followed by two names that I know you know. Hoyt Wilhelm with the 1.5 ERA. That was in 1959. And Jimmy Palmer with the 1.69 in 1975. I mean, 50 years ago. So it just shows you how dominant Trevor Rogers has been. And frankly, the pitching staff has been dominant up and down over the past several weeks. Since July 26th, the Birds lead the majors with a 3.25 ERA. Since the trade deadline 3 weeks ago, our starters lead the MLB with a 2.26 ERA. And that is, obviously, that's Trevor Rogers, that's Sagano, that's Kramer, that's Povich, and that's Brandon Young. Since July 15th, the Birds lead the MLB with 16 quality starts, and since May 24th, the Birds have allowed 3 runs or less in an AL best 39 games. And so, look, the numbers for this pitching staff, and we can all say too little too late. But remember how last year the hitting struggled for the second part of the year, and those struggles continued through, frankly, most of this season. So if you do the inverse, and if we're ending this season with really strong pitching, hopefully that carries over to next year. You add an arm or two. You definitely have to focus on building up the bullpen, and now we need a closer. But it starts to give you some hope for this team, especially when you also look at the young core of hitters that the Orioles have as well. So unfortunately, fortunately, Kyle Bradish is back in a mere couple of days for the Birds. Unfortunately, Felix Bautista is going to be out for at least a year, so the Birds are going shopping for a closer. I'm Jon Leiberman. This is Orioles Digest.